Alright, raid team, we're finally at the boss. Let's go! For glory! Yeah! Okay, gotta just avoid his aggro radius, but I need that banner. Ha! Look, idiot! Just lit your banner on fire, what are you gonna do? You can't do shit! Yeah, you like the view, bitch? You like the— Your quest objective is to kill that orc. The one that's 10 feet away? Easiest XP ever! Yeah! Aha! What the— Yo, what's wrong with this fucking horse? Other way, you dipshit! This is bullshit! Alright team, since my last Lord of the Rings online upload, I've put another 45 hours into the game, so I've played for about 53 hours total since returning again, and in total I've played LOTRO somewhere over 3,000 hours in my entire lifetime. So for this reason, I think I can offer you guys a unique perspective on the game in its current state, because I've seen a lot of the updates and changes it's gone through in the past. So it's time for an impressions video on how I think LOTRO is looking in 2019, and if it's worth your time. Now for this video, I've tried to tone down my Lord of the Rings nerdiness, obsession, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to approach LOTRO from more of the standpoint of how does it fare as an MMO, as opposed to a Lord of the Rings game, because I feel like that would be most relevant to a wider audience, since some of you guys may not have watched Lord of the Rings. Literally everyone has— okay, my girlfriend hasn't watched Lord of the Rings and refuses to, and this relationship has been going on for 4 years, and I love her, but she has this huge flaw where she won't watch Lord of the Rings, and I don't know what to do! The golem in my head is like, dump her, do it. But the Smeagol is like, don't do it. This is the only chance you got. I know I said I was gonna release a couple episodes of me playing LOTRO before uploading this review, but I watched my last episode again, and I think I painted more of a negative picture of the game than I intended to, so I wanted to clear that up by dropping this video now. Since LOTRO is my most beloved game of pretty much all time, that's why I'm more hasty to be critical of the game, because it's one I've loved in the past, and I hate seeing changes that make the game worse. And I've also gone absolutely ham on this game since the last video. I didn't even know how to cut up all that footage. And on those days I felt demotivated to play the game, of course Goose put the trilogy on in the background.
The red sun rises. Blood has been spilled this night.
False. That's pollution. Alright guys, you know the drill. But if you're new here, hello. Welcome to the Dojo of Goose. We're about to go on a bit of a journey through the extremely depressing world of Middle-earth, so buckle in because we're starting with the breakdown of the game, which gives you guys an idea of what kind of MMO LOTRO is, what I've accomplished in the game, as well as its payment model, and that will be followed by the pros, cons, and lastly, the final verdict. The breakdown! Yeah, I can't play that, that's copyrighted. But hopefully that half a second was enough to get you hyped. What is Lord of the Rings Online? It's an MMORPG based on the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it'll take you along more of a behind-the-scenes look at what's happening in the books or movies. You're essentially one of the unsung heroes that didn't have enough glam and glitz to make it into the movie, apparently. But I mean, to be fair, who's as glam and glitzy as Gimli? Our character doesn't have a shot in hell next to this guy. But you're still doing a lot to intervene with the plans of Mordor throughout your journey, which will follow a similar path to the one the members of the Fellowship do. You'll be able to visit all of the iconic locations, which for the most part are jaw-droppingly detailed and true to form. I'm not kidding, half of the enjoyment you'll get out of this game is just reaching and exploring new regions, because this world is massive. It is so big. Just Moria alone, what I think would have been the most difficult place to make, is so ridiculously well done that you'll be wondering how the devs were able to truly create such a spot-on Middle-earth for us to inhabit. Now, LOTRO has tab targeting combat. It came out in 2007, and of course has been worked on since then, but the game has felt based off of that EverQuest or World of Warcraft tab targeting combat, and you'll feel this game is like a bit cloney to those in the beginning, but I think there's enough that they've done so you don't feel like you're playing a flat-out cash grab clone or anything like that. In terms of playstyles, you have 10 classes available and 6 races available, 2 of which you need to pay to unlock. Not all races can play all classes, but this doesn't feel anywhere near as annoying as gender-locked classes. Why is that still a thing in 2019? These Eastern MMOs do not care what we're saying about it. I almost respect that level of stubbornness, but I also do not, at all. There's the fairly standard PvE scheme here that you'd expect to see in most MMOs, so you've got the grindy quests, the instances and dungeons along the way to max level, as well as a handful at max level, and with raids being the pinnacle of PvE epicness. On the PvP side is where things greatly differ from other MMOs though, as it's not just simple player versus player. Sauron is the big bad bitch of Middle-earth, so the game figures, why waste time beating the shit out of other free peoples of Middle-earth when you got a guy just down the block wanting to murder you? So Lord of the Rings offers PvP in the form of player versus monster player, which allows players to either play the character they're using for the main game, or you can create a monster character, specifically for killing free people's players in a planet-side style, continuous region of conflict called the Etten Moors. It's freaking epic, and I'll get to this later. LOTRO also offers a legendary server if you're a subscriber, which people have thought is like LOTRO's version of a WoW Classic server, but this isn't actually the case. To quote Daedalus AI on Reddit, the 2 legendary servers are a copy from the live server, including every change made, but just capped at level 50 with the base game Shadows of Angmar. This was true when Daedalus posted it, but since then the legendary server has released up to level 75 content, as well as the Rise of Isengard expansion. So legendary servers aren't even really a vanilla experience of LOTRO, they have all the changes and updates the main version has, but what these servers are doing is pretty much giving you a place to restart the game with other players with a limited amount of content, and they will slowly re-release the expansions over time. So it's re-experiencing the game with other legendary server players, which is kind of cool because that means there's a concentration of players all at the same point of the game with you if you want to re-level, which you just won't see on the main servers. But it's not a return to vanilla LOTRO from 2007 or anything like that. For players who love group content, this is obviously a great way to experience LOTRO again or from scratch. My experience with the game. That's a great question. Maybe you guys want to know about how I obtained all the raid gear from the Rift of Ner'zgashu, or the Watcher, or the Tower of Dol Guldur, all of which went obsolete within 3 months of me getting them. You know, I'd say it's a good thing I've gotten my priorities in order since then, but I run an MMO channel. So I played this game, I'd say back in its prime. I was pretty heavily playing LOTRO from 2008 to the end of 2010. So when I quit the first time, I had experienced pretty much all the content there was to experience in-game up to the end of a Nedwaith. I probably said that wrong, my bad. I had done all of the raids to completion except for the Ost Dunhoth one, so it's safe to say I played the absolute crap out of this game. Don't believe me? I've got the titles to prove it. It's no biggie. I don't want to talk about it. Boom! Look at them! Look at them! Look at all those juicy titles. Goose, stop it. They don't care. They don't care about the insane, the almost endless amount of titles you have. They don't care. Stop! Okay, I'm good. Okay, just a little more. I mean, look at all of them. As I mentioned in my last video, I needed to be Mr. Completionist, so I always wanted to experience every single raid and group instance, the solo content, and the PvMP, the whole works. But on top of that, I also wanted to complete all the deeds for these areas, so I was doing group content like raiding around the clock. And I would raid back then 3 times a week for hours at a time. I was lucky to be part of a really strong and community-oriented kinship at the time. My LOTRO kinmates were like a family to me, and the combination of this world, topped with the amazing friendships I made, are why I ended up playing this game anywhere between 4 to 10 hours a day. Did I skip school to play this game? Yup. Will I make my future kids go to school every day when they say they're sick because based off of what I did, I don't trust them? Yup. My obsession with Lord of the Rings got me into LOTRO, and my kinship kept me in it for over 3,000 hours of my life. And here we are again, me seeing how the game has turned out half a decade later, and since returning, I have gone from level 79 to 97, completed most of the Rohan story content, reached Helm's Deep, which is the level 95 plus area, and done a bunch of group dungeon style content in places like Moria and Barad Guldur, as well as revisiting Annuminus and some dungeons in Angmar. And so, as a fresh level 91, Aran decided to take his talents to Isengard, where he could find a challenge of skill equal to his own. Sup, dude? Just another big boy coming to hang with the big boys.
Hit me! I fucking dare you! Okay, then do something!
Aaron von Buren tasted defeat, there's no doubt about it, but he was determined to come back better than ever. He immediately threw himself into a vicious training regime of 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run every day, testing himself to the absolute limit and getting trained by the most talented minds in the fight game. Yeah, none of that actually happened. I just found some random dude who wanted to help me run warg pen runs several times over for fat stacks of XP. I practically sat on a lawn chair and sipped a daiquiri while this guy was making sashimi out of orcs for the next 30 minutes. Not my finest hour in terms of development as a player or person, even, for that matter. But shit, if someone tells you they want to help you through Rohan, you just take it and run. Take it and run, man. Just Usain Bolt that shit. And so I returned. Level 96. 10 times buffer. Infinity times more conquerable. Less conquerable. Guess who's back again. Aaron's back. Go slap that ass.
10 seconds later.
The payment model. So the payment model seems a little convoluted, but I'll try and lay it out as well as possible. You can either be a free player, a premium player, or a VIP player. Free players are very limited in how much content they can do, and I believe they only have access to 4 regions of the game that'll get them to around level 35. Most of the main storyline quests are free and will give you XP, but obviously you'll need to do some extra gameplay to earn the XP to keep up with those main story quests as they progress in level requirement. So you can grind LOTRO points, which is for LOTRO's cash shop, and they're given from completing deeds or certain quests, and if you earn enough points from in-game you can spend them on unlocking a new region, but this isn't ideal at all since you'll have to grind out a shit ton to afford the new content. So next is Premium, which you can get for purchasing either a subscription for even just a month, or buying store points, so pretty much spending real money, even just once, will get you Premium status, and that is permanent. If you try the game out and like what you see in the free version, I'd strongly recommend just buying 1 month of LOTRO VIP, so you can become a Premium player, because being free to play is more of a trial than anything. Premium players still have access to a lot of the game, and you only lose out on some bonuses VIP players get, but instead of spending the next several minutes covering that in detail, I'll leave a link in the description of the video so you guys can see what features stay and what gets taken away. Peep my rhymes. Okay, we're at the pros. Let's rock. This dwarf was sick of helping these needy ass horse lords. Ooh, my village is burning. My family is over there. No one cares, okay? That's what the last guy said, and that turned out to be a complete waste of time. I showed up and they were already dead. Not falling for it this time, buddy boy. No, sir. Your family's probably already dead. Chill the fuck out. LOTRO is an unbelievably well-made recreation of Middle-earth. The art team found this perfectly fine line between creating this incredibly charming and breathtaking setting, one that invokes awe throughout almost the entire journey by its attention to detail and generally on-point layout in regards to its ease of exploration, and in complete contrast to that, despite all the beauty around you, each region maintains this consistent underlying feeling of eeriness and dread. Wildermore, for instance, a region in Rohan I was recently leveling in, was really reminiscent of a place called Ferotial, another snowy region that had these expansive vistas that looked as gorgeous as they did foreboding. You look into the distance as the snow comes down and your character breathes out cold air, the conditions making your surroundings hard to see, so it's almost blanketed by this hazy darkness. And all you want to do is stay at the settlement and make your character smoke his blunt all night, but nah, your quest objectives are telling you to go directly into that dim horizon. Or you may find yourself deep in the mines of Moria. These thick shadows and old statues surround you and give you this sense of claustrophobia, just like how it appeared when the Fellowship was in Moria in the movies. Seriously, Moria is so breathtaking, they knocked what I thought would be an extremely challenging area to create out of the park. And in stark contrast to these aforementioned zones is the delightfully childish and light-hearted land of the hobbits, the Shire, just like how it was represented in the books and movies. And if you play a hobbit, you'll start your journey out in the Shire and begin that slow descent into the chaos consuming seemingly every corner of Middle-earth except for the Shire. And then there's Bree and Rivendell and Lothlorien and so on, all of which have the landmarks you've heard of, as well as plenty that you may not have. For how flippin' big of a game world Lord of the Rings Online has, it is so mind-blowing that there is this much detail packed into it. The devs have truly honored the world that J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of Lord of the Rings, crafted. The first time you arrive in Rivendell, you're coming over the hill and your horse starts trotting down the path, and you see this valley that holds one of the most iconic locations in the whole series. The music is playing perfectly in tune with the sense of wonder you'll probably be feeling when you see Rivendell for the first time. At its best, LOTRO offers breathtakingly immersive and atmospheric surroundings, and luckily it's almost always at its best. And because these environments are so rich with detail and tone, it serves as a distraction from how much the graphics have aged. Now it's important to keep in mind while watching this that what you're seeing may not be a good representation of LOTRO graphics at their best, because I had to use my Stone Age laptop and the settings were only on the high setting. But when you crank this game to ultra settings, I honestly think this game looks like it aged decently. And when downloading the game, if you choose the 6GB HD graphics add-on, that'll give you some very crisp looking graphics. Obviously, since this is still a 2007 game, there's only so much they can do to boost the graphics, so it doesn't look great by today's standards. But what I'm trying to say is plenty of other games have aged much worse. Next, Pro. The story doesn't shy away from the grittier side of Middle-earth. Like, you may hear a story about a rider of Rohan just lost plenty of his men during a trap just to return home from a tragic battle, to the even more tragic sight of his family being brutally slaughtered. Yo man, that big dude just killed your entire generation. Don't be a hero, you don't gotta do this. Man, get your ass back here, man. It's a depressing ass game, man. LOTRO gives a genuine portrayal of what Middle-earth is, and I'm so happy they did not bastardize or downplay some of the honestly shocking stories you'll hear and things you'll see in this game, despite its teen rating. Middle-earth is a seriously dark place, and LOTRO wants to make that clear without laying on the stories too thick to the point of cheesiness. The thing I hate about this game, and any old MMOs for that matter, is they build up these big bad bosses, but every time they kill someone, it's the weakest looking shit. I mean, it looks like he's going, boop, touched you on the head with my club, you're it.
10 seconds later.
Holy shit, what the fuck? What in the tits are the chances that he'd throw this guy like he got hit by a grav hammer 10 seconds later? Man, I liked that guy. As much as I hated the Rohan expansion from a gameplay standpoint, I am not kidding you guys when I say there were moments I was almost in tears. That's how hard-hitting some of the moments in the storyline are. But maybe to give you some context, The Notebook was one of my favorite movies as a teenager. I also read the book Twilight. I'm an emotional little bitch sometimes. It is what it is. This could just be a me thing. You guys might be watching this shit and being like, oh my gosh, turn off the cheese whiz. But to be fair to me, the game feels pretty mature in how it handles tragedy. Like, a lot of MMOs have storyline quests where you wouldn't even blink an eye at some of the moments that are probably supposed to make you feel something. But LOTRO almost forces you to feel the impact of the sadder moments of the game, and this is a good thing. For instance, the thing you do a quest line for will eventually deal with some heavy tragedy where you have to enter into a solo instance and kind of watch the aftermath unfold, and the way it's portrayed, the things he says, the things the other NPCs say, it shook me, man. It's tough to read. And yes, you're reading it. The NPCs don't really talk in this game aside from some like one-liners when you click on them, but the rest is reading. The fact that this shit hit me so hard, I couldn't believe it, and it's not the first time I've been emotionally compromised during playing this game, and just by some text that's popping up on my screen. I mean, shit, I'm about to cry right now. This is such a pro to me because I feel as though this genre, because of the way these games are set up, with all the grinding and the fetch questy crap, something MMOs struggle with is delivering a powerful story, and that's probably mostly because of this format, where we complete 10 to 100 quests a day. This is honestly the last genre I'd expect to make me feel any sort of emotions, aside from screaming at my screen if we die on the last raid boss. Now, there are some MMOs that are an exception to this rule, but none have been as captivating yet as LOTRO's has. And no, you don't need to be into Lord of the Rings to appreciate these moments. The emotions come from these moments by just being like a human being, because we're seeing something really tragic. I don't know if that makes sense, but these are just good, genuine moments of despair being delivered to the player, and I think the people that worked on this game have really just taken a trilogy and respected its source content to the point where I think everyone will appreciate the storyline experience. Next up, the depth to player customization. There is always something you can be working towards changing or improving on your character, because there are a lot of different things your character needs. Your hobbit, or man, or dwarf, or whatever, he's a project. He's a needy ass mofo. Whether it be working on upgrading your legendary weapon, and then getting the right specs on it so it's as effective in combat as possible, or maybe it's working on getting those best relics for your legendary, which is a pain in the ass. And then you may want to acquire the right armor and jewelry set so you can experience the hardest combat content the game offers, or it's the deeds that'll help you work on your virtues, of which there are many. And now mounted combat has been introduced to the game, so from level 75 to 105, you have a mounted horse with his own legendaries and his own trait tree that you need to develop. And of course there is crafting, which I'd say has a lot of value in this game, maybe not for the toughest of raid and dungeon content, but kinships are regularly boosting players up and getting them caught up with gear by just having crafters at the ready to supply the rookie guys. And lastly, I think, probably not, there's just so much shit. You can build up your reputation with one of the many available factions in the game, so you can get access to all sorts of faction-specific items and gear. Don't you want a groovy, mushroom-growing tent in your backyard? Cause the hobbits will hook you up. They're useful for some things, like mushroom-growing camps. Oh, and destroying the ring. I mean, that's kind of up there, but the mushroom camps are where they really hit their stride. And on the less stressful and more joyous side of things, you can work on collecting cosmetic items to fashion the best look in Middle-earth, or you can go for unlocking all sorts of unique looking mounts that can be obtained by completing some questline in the game or even some deeds. And don't get me started on the titles you can unlock. I think I've made it very clear that I should attend a TA meeting. Get it? Titles Anonymous? That's just some dad humor right there, I'm so sorry. The next pro. This is probably the only Lord of the Rings game that can allow people to explore the whole story of Middle-earth because of it being an MMO. What I mean by this is, MMOs are designed to be huge games that can support huge worlds, and expansion packs on top of expansion packs. I mean, if anyone knows that, it's my wallet. I paid full price and subscription. I'm trying to think back, like, how did I even afford this game? I mean, between all the dates I went that joke's not happening. No. What I meant to say is between the Yu-Gi-Oh card booster packs and the Magic the Gathering booster packs, how did I pay for this? But currently the game has expansions that pretty much take you from the start of the Fellowship of the Ring all the way to the end of the Return of the King. And in between is pretty much every region you've not only seen in the movies, but it's got most of the ones you've read about in the books or movies as well. If you want to experience the Lord of the Rings narrative in a different way, LOTRO is a great way to do it, because as an MMO, it has been able to accommodate the entire Frodo/Fellowship era. It has an insanely long main story quest line packed with as much detail as the zones you'll visit, and this will help you further your understanding of the goings-on at certain points of the three-part trilogy, as well as tons of side content to build on that even more. It's really cool that one game can essentially be your one stop for everything Lord of the Rings, which we won't ever see again in a Lord of the Rings game. Because even for a game that can accommodate this massive of a scale, LOTRO took 12 years to finally bring the main story to Mordor, aka the end of the Return of the King book. I know Amazon Game Studios is reportedly working on a Lord of the Rings MMO, but I really don't imagine it'll have the scale of this game. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe they got like 1 million people working on this game. It's Amazon. They can afford that shit. With how much money I spend on their site, they can easily afford 15 more people. It's awesome Amazon is working on a Lord of the Rings MMO, but when it comes to MMO news, there have been tons of MMOs announced that never see the light of day or are stuck in eternal development, so until I see gameplay footage, I'm skeptical of it even releasing. But the point is, I don't think any LOTRO games will ever pull off this scale again to recreate all of Middle-earth, and it's an amazing feat that Lord of the Rings Online not only offers players a ludicrous amount of content, but it's also consistently high quality, both in how it gives you a deeper look into the books, as well as creating a world that is designed so well that it makes it all believable. You feel like you are a part of this story. The next pro is the player versus monster player. Okay, so I can't really show you guys gameplay for player versus monster player because I'm not max level. I just get rolled on if I tried to do it right now. It scales players up to max level, but you're still disadvantaged in a lot of ways, so I'm not going to get back into it just yet. But what I can show you is my stats in PvMP. Wow, Goose, you're kind of the shit. I know, it's whatevs. Okay, this is actually a bit misleading. I think any assists count as a kill, so if I just went into the middle of like a mosh pit of players and did like a single AoE, I probably got credit for whatever monsters were killed. But you guys, player versus monster player is one of the most epic PvP variations I've ever experienced in an MMO. Even in just like any game. It's incredibly thrilling because of how it's a continuous, persistent region that players are fighting in. Think PlanetSide 2, but for Middle-earth. In other words, the region that PvMP takes place in, called the Etten Moors, never sleeps. It's a persistent war zone, full of different outposts and castles available for capturing or defending 24/7, and you can roam any part of the moors freely. But be careful, because the enemy can do the same, and you never know if you might run into a small gang of players or an entire raid full of them. If you're just getting into it, make sure to party up with other players because strategy plays a huge part in the moors. It's a no man's land where it is very easy to die if you don't stay organized and have a leader that knows what they're doing. Seriously, every single fight I've been in is some heart-pumping shit in this place. Especially castle sieges, they are so cool. If you capture a castle, NPC allies will spawn and help defend the keep, and that's when the most batshit crazy fights go down. I haven't played on the monster side much at all, so almost all my PvPing has been done on my champion, and it is both epic and nerve-wracking when a huge army of monster players charge through the entrance of a castle, a clusterfuck of players just swinging at each other and fighting for their lives. It is golden, and even the smaller gang fights are exciting stuff, but there's a downside to this. Pump the brakes, kid. It seems like PvMP is only active certain times in the day now. I've jumped in on my orc a few times and haven't been able to find any monster parties or any active free people's parties to murder the shit out of. But I know there's still action out there because I see people still talking about it in the world chat regularly enough. Now I gotta put the community under the pros. While it's much smaller than when I last played, the community is still doing a great job of what made LOTRO so special from a community standpoint so many years ago. Now just a quick note, my experience only involves land roval, so I'm unsure of the situation in other servers. There are still plenty of events hosted and held by players in land roval, like the traveling bands that perform songs for sizable audiences and passers-by using the really awesome in-game instrument system that actually takes some skill to do. I tried it, holy shit, these guys are wizards, man. They'll play like flute versions of 22 by Taylor Swift and just crush it. And I still encounter role players regularly enough to strongly recommend this game to any of you that are interested in RPing. There are so many emotes as well as features integrated for RPers to create stories together effortlessly. And that's why this MMO has still held on to a player base that's dedicated to that. The decline in players in LOTRO is undeniable, but there are still plenty of kinships that hold fairly active player bases, and any kinship I've been a part of, both since returning and back in the day, has been both helpful and drama-free. I haven't encountered any rude players, even when doing pickup groups. What is going on here? Why are you all so nice? I mean, I'm Canadian, I know what being nice is all about, and your guys' niceness still creeps me out. It feels like the majority of players that have remained are adults that are just passionate about the game. Even World Chat, the known cesspool of MMOs. Sure, there are some people in this game who decide to get into a heated debate about politics, even though someone just asked about how to get the expansions for the cheapest rate. Or someone might randomly say the Lord of the Rings movies sucked ass in World Chat after an extended period of silence, but overall I'd say even World Chat is quite civil and helpful. Every single one of my questions has been answered by other players, and usually more than one. This community is supportive and they want to help you succeed in the game, so don't avoid the game based on the declining player base. There's still plenty of dedicated players. Like me, I'll be in LOTRO when I just got a ship blown up in Eve. It is so hard playing two MMOs. Ugh. If anyone wants to power level me, I'll give you literally nothing because I'm broke. Hashtag college student life. I graduated a year ago. Shit! Next pro, the group content is exhilarating and badass. A lot of people say LOTRO has become more of a casual MMO experience, and I just want to say your experience in LOTRO is what you want it to be. If you want to go after the best, toughest content frequently, then it's not a casual experience. If you're into raiding and on the fence for that reason, just play the game. Go for that content because, while I haven't experienced the new endgame content for Mordor, I've completed a ton of other dungeon content and raid content, all of which is still available, and some older dungeons and raids even scale to your level, so there's a lot to do in terms of that tougher content, and there's still a lot of kinships looking for raiders on my server, Landroval. Back on topic, the group content has never lost that special feeling of excitement for me, where I enter an instance with a squad of teammates and my nerves are through the roof, and I'm on edge about what's about to happen. And I get this feeling regardless of if I've completed the instance before or not, because every run is different, every fellowship, aka group of players, is different. There is always something that can go wrong or differently, and raiding is the MMO equivalent of going pro in a sport. Your teammates are expecting the best from you, and they need you to do your job, and if you F it up, you can literally be responsible for wiping the entire raid. LOTRO raiding is some jaw-clenching, teeth-grinding shit. It is so intense, and while the stakes are high and the boss mechanics are usually brutally unforgiving, there is no greater feeling than completing a hard raid. I mentioned it in my last video, but I wear this title like an MMO badge of honor, so I'm just gonna say it again. My kinship back in the day was the 3rd kinship on Landroval to down the Lieutenant of Dol Guldur on hard mode, and I was a member of that raid. It was brutal. We did like 9 hours a week of attempting to complete this raid for months, and it all came down to this incredible moment of cheers and tears in our Ventrilo server, back when Ventrilo was still cool. I say this because I want you guys to know there is a lot of insanely satisfying gameplay waiting for you in LOTRO if you want to find those moments outside of just enjoying the world and storyline. I've rarely done an instance in this game and felt like the boss mechanics lacked creativity, and this creativity is what causes my anxiety to spike every time I do a dungeon or a raid, because I know that there are some tricky mechanics coming my way, and I have to be on the ball for them, because it makes you think, it gets your adrenaline pumping, and it challenges you in fun ways, not annoying ones. On top of that, I personally have really enjoyed the level design to the group content stuff. They mostly feel well planned out in terms of pacing, and it seems like a lot of thought went into the layout of these instances to either push a narrative, because yes, of course all these instances have a story to them, or just to challenge you by throwing a unique encounter your way. The raids are important to me because I think they do a great job of matching that feeling you had when you saw the Belrog in Fellowship of the Ring. Just like the Fellowship in Moria, you're going into the deepest, darkest corners of Middle-earth and finding the most wicked and powerful creatures in its midst. These raids put you in these sprawling zones full of danger, and just like how Frodo or Aragorn or any of our heroes take this step away from safety and journey towards the darkest evils of Middle-earth, when you get to raiding, it feels like your character kind of undergoes that same journey. You started in a safe and calm land, and now you have to go against an almost unfathomable level of enemy. Now we're just about at the cons, but I want to say for you solo players, if you are solo and still want to experience more demanding gameplay, there are still some pretty cool group style substitutes for you guys, in the form of skirmishes and epic battles. Skirmishes are LOTRO's instanced form of horde mode, where you fight wave after wave of enemies all across Middle-earth. It can be pretty fun and challenging at times, especially when you try a harder tier, but it doesn't really hold a candle to the depth of any of the group dungeon style content. Epic Battles is another form of skirmish, but pretty much just on steroids, where you're fighting alongside tons of ally NPCs against tons of enemy NPCs, and it has its own ranking system which provides pretty awesome rewards, and on top of that, Epic Battles allow your character to have a lot more interactivity with the map, like you can repair defenses, you can mount a ballista, and load it with the kind of ammo you want, but epic battles do require you to be at least level 95, I believe, so skirmishes is the only instanced content you can do at any level that has both solo and group options. Okay, we're at the cons. It's been 30 minutes, none of you are still with me, so there's almost no point to this section, but we'll go for it. Con number 1. Without fail, all quests have been kill this or retrieve this off of these guys, which you need to kill to get them, or go find and click on 5 or 10 of this random object and wait for the induction bar every time you do. It's the most notorious MMO formula that you'll be up against in LOTRO, and it certainly hasn't earned that notoriety from how intriguing it is. Quite the opposite, actually. You guys, have you looked, I don't know, up? Have you seen how big the thing you're trying to mine out of the ground is? You're tired? Well, I'm not fucking surprised. You're trying to unearth a rock the size of the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. So that might be why you're tired. Honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who's getting shit done around here. Keep at it, guys. You almost got it. You dumb bastards. They're gonna get a hell of an arm pump, though. A couple of Arnold Schwarzeneggers walking around in Middle-earth. I made a funny. Looking back, it's pretty messed up to think the quests you do in the first 20 minutes of LOTRO, you've pretty much seen the formula to all of them for the rest of the game. The tutorial ones are the same ones you're doing at level 70, 80, 90, and so on, hundreds of hours down the line, just in a different zone with different enemies. What's most egregious about this, though, is LOTRO has seen several expansions, all of which must be paid for to access their content. I have paid individually for every single expansion I've added onto my account, so if they are still charging for these, why have they not varied up the content and added on some exciting new quest types? I get that they offer raids, instances, skirmishes, epic battles, and other avenues of gameplay like that, but the reality is, most people will be leveling up in LOTRO from questing. I don't know a single player that hasn't gone through the main story arc. And guess how you do the main story arc? Questing! And more questing! So if this is the main way of leveling and experiencing the main story, why the shit haven't you guys at least made it worth our while in all of the expansions of the game that have been released for a cost? to try and add some more compelling quest objectives or questing gameplay. Why the same old shit since level 1? This is the number one reason I imagine new players will hit total burnout if they start fresh in LOTRO, because there are 120 levels to get through, and you can only look forward to maybe 4 to 5 different quest types total. How whack is that? And to give you guys perspective, when you get to higher levels, it takes a long time to get to the next level. So at level 86, I needed 1.2 million XP to get to 87. Quests would maybe give me an average of 17,000 XP. That's 71 quests just for one level, all of which have next to no differentiation. And then think of that grind per level and only getting worse as you get higher up. This leveling system is such a disservice to LOTRO because it creates this boring point of entry, this wall, that hides all the great, fun content the game has because players leveling up for the first time can't see over that wall until they reach max level or close to it. And with the Rohan expansion, I want to emphasize that not only do I think this, but so many players that I have talked to also feel the same way. They say Rohan is the worst of it in terms of leveling. So I think just because of where I started back up when I started playing again, I got smacked right in the face at the start with this annoying region. But it does get better to level after Rohan, and especially before. So to be fair, this problem didn't feel as in your face when I used to play, and the reason it feels more prevalent nowadays is because there aren't many players left. So this means I'm not able to break up the questing grind by doing group content with other players much, which is unfortunate because all that group content, that was by far the best part of my journey when I used to play, and I wish the population was still booming, so all newer players, or even me now, could experience that on their way to max level, which is the perfect segue into the next con. Almost too perfect. Shit, I'm about to have a lot of bad luck really soon. The declining population is the next con. I've had 4-hour game sessions and not seen a single player in the game. When I started back in-game this time around, I've been pretty much exclusively going through the Rohan zone, when it comes strictly to leveling that is, to reach level 97 from 79. In that whole time in Rohan, I shit you not, I have seen 4 players in the Rohan region. To be fair, that's 2 more players than the Fallout 76 servers could handle at launch. I'll never get tired of roasting that game. Go check out my animation for it. But still, holy shit on a stick, lads and lasses. 4 people in like 45 hours. That's 0.08 people per hour. I used a calculator. And how do you think it would look if 0.08 of a human being took physical manifestation? You just see like 3 toes running around. And they'd probably be nasty hobbit feet too. Yeah. Okay, speaking of which, do any of you gentlemen out there wax your feet? Does it hurt? I'm asking for a friend and he's got hairy feet and his girlfriend is getting kind of creeped out. Now keep in mind, this is just one expansion region. Sorry, furball. The older regions like the hubs, Bree, Shire, you know. I see more players in those areas, but still not much. But I just want to give you guys an accurate heads up of the huge inconsistency of players you'll see along the leveling stretch of the game, which will definitely impact the options available for obtaining XP. That being said though, in the looking for group chat channel, I see a decent amount of people advertising for group content, and those groups usually seem to fill up. Now, most of this content is being done by max level players, but if you guys are willing to go through that grind, there are greener pastures waiting for you on the other side. Like the Shire, the greenest place in all of Middle-earth. Just kidding, the Shire is some level 5 shit. You will literally see anything but the Shire on the other side. Next con, the super annoying cash shop. Oh man, this is by far my biggest con, so I'm gonna go off a bit here. I don't think I've ever been so upset by seeing cash shop practices implemented in a game. LOTRO needed to make a switch to free-to-play, that makes sense, and having a cash shop also makes sense as a result of this change. What does not make sense is why they need to let it infiltrate every damn part of the gameplay. Every single window you open or thing you do, there will be a constant reminder that this cursed cash shop exists. Get out of my face, cash shop! Get out of my face! Oh no. Oh shit. Why do I always have to throw a fit when there's a full coffee on my desk? Golly, that's a puddle. At some point, people are gonna start wondering why this white carpet has a big shit stain on it. And I'll tell them it's because of this cash shop. It gives me shotgun diarrhea. Whether it be tasks you can reset, or the flippin' slot machine rewards you can get, or how you can literally buy stat tomes from the store that let you permanently boost your character's in-game stats. It's not by a lot, but a stat boost is a stat boost, okay? Or if it's the loot boxes that can apparently give you end-game gear gear, and like whoever said, yes, let's go ahead with adding endgame gear in buyable loot boxes. Look, I know it's not max tier gear, and you need to do the raid to get the max tier gear, but this is gear that, from my understanding and from what I've been told, this gear will be enough for getting you into a raid. So the thing that is supposed to give you the peak of satisfaction and accomplishment in an MMO, getting prepared for the hardest of endgame content, you can skip that. Don't worry about it. Like, for people shitting on Destiny 2, or even like Call of Duty, at least those guys are giving like mainly cosmetic stuff. Correction, upon further research, Goose found out Call of Duty did not just give cosmetic items. Oopsies! I feel like whoever is responsible for these decisions is just like undoing all the work that was poured into making this game an experience for players and delivering an experience for players, when in the back of all of our minds, we know we can just buy our way to even better content way faster. It's beginning to feel like this game, this immersive world that is available to me, is just a front for the cash shop that the company tries so frequently to promote. And I've played a lot of MMOs and none have offered this many progression boosty items, and done it this obtrusively. In LOTRO, you are constantly reminded that this shop exists, as almost every window has one or several areas that are either locked or offering boosts to your character. No attempt is made to make the cash shop more subtle, it's meant to be a visible entity around the clock, and the people who say you don't need to buy this shit, why are you complaining? Yes, that's true, I don't have to, but the problem is in how it fundamentally changes the experience of the game, and it alters the way these devs are making these games, from how can we deliver an amazing gameplay experience to how we can make more money and more money off of this. Like, LOTRO feels more soulless this time around, which is completely fucked because an LOTRO game should feel anything but that. But it also feels grindier, whether it be the leveling or the new avenues of gameplay the devs have added into the game just to try and monetize it somehow. The LOTRO cash shop is that annoying kid in class who needs to be in the center of everything.
Yes, Tinkerbell.
Summer.
And you just want to go one class where he doesn't put up his hand and make you notice him, but nah, his hand is up. But it's okay, because you've been practicing the art of karate, and you karate chop that arm in half, but slip and fall off your chair as you were mid-swing, and you get taken to the hospital. That's what would happen to me. That's why I'm a pacifist. Peace and harmony to all, except for the asshole that made this cash shop. I hope you can't sleep at night. Look, the point is, the cash shop can't talk, but it still won't shut the fuck up. Think about it. Think about it. And if it's still not making sense, like it isn't to me right now, just keep thinking about it, because one day it probably still won't. So the last couple of cons are milder ones. Number one is the mounted combat. As you've probably seen in this video, the combat horses are really janky and awkward to control, and they just look super awkward as well. They're gliding all over the damn place, and even after looking heavily into this and reading your guys' comments, controlling this horse has only slightly gotten easier. Dude, I'm literally right in your face. How am I too far away? If I got any closer, I'd be breathing on your earlobe like this. You like that? You like that, Danny? Okay, it's time to call it a night. I've played many games with horseback riding, and none of them have felt this ridiculous and looked this immersion breaking. That being said, I do like the fact that they included mounted combat, because I think LOTRO is the only game that's had mounted combat where the player has this much of a hands-on approach to their horse, where we get to choose what to equip on them and all the stats on that item, the type of horse we want to ride, whether it be light, medium, or heavy, as well as a complete control over a pretty expansive trait tree to really just add that much more depth to what is already a pretty meaty game in terms of character progression. But if you're like me and the cons slightly outweigh the pros with this horse, I mean, look what I named him, that's not like a nickname out of love or anything, you don't have to worry, because after level 105, your combat mount is no longer really part of the experience. The devs have oddly just done away with it. I'm surprised they actually dropped combat mounts so quickly instead of just refining them over updates though. Like, they had a cool idea here, why not just fix it up instead of dropping it so fast? The next milder con is, if you watched my last video, you heard me talk about how I heard champions are obsolete for raiding. Now, long story short, the general consensus seems to be if you're very skilled with a champ, they can still put out high enough DPS and have enough value in raids. But where this champs are obsolete statement comes from is how the last handful of updates to the game have been catering more towards the ranged classes. So people are saying champs aren't really in high demand right now because why take a champ when you know you'll get a better performance in a raid from a class like a Runekeeper or Hunter? Now, I put this under the mild cons because I think it's ridiculous that an MMO can be this far into its life cycle, 12 years in LOTRO's case, and they can still mess up class balancing to the point where this is a huge issue to a lot of people. There are far more people agreeing with the sentiment that champs aren't raid material right now compared to other classes than there are people who are saying they're still good for that endgame content. And I think it's stupid that this kind of issue can even come up in an MMO that's been out so long and they've had this class in the game so long, where someone just worked their ass off to level their character up, get the right equipment and pieces on them, just to find out that they're the bottom of the tadpole for raid selection. Champs are still the best for AoE DPS apparently, but single target DPS is what is required in a lot of endgame content nowadays apparently. Now this is a milder con because MMOs get updated regularly enough and there's a new expansion on the horizon for LOTRO, so there's a high chance this will be fixed. And hopefully that fix comes with the new expansion, otherwise that's a lot of players who play these classes, like myself, that will constantly be wondering if they should even keep pressing forward with their characters just to get to endgame and not be needed. And personally, that's also why I haven't pre-purchased Minas Morgul. I love my champ. I want to be able to play my champ, and I also love raiding. So you can see where the problem comes from. Now the neutrals, I forgot about these. We'll crank these out quickly, team, don't worry. First up, the housing. Well, it's awesome that LOTRO has housing, and you can choose whether you want your house to be a dwarf, hobbit, elf, or man-styled house in those respective style neighborhoods. The actual house customization system feels pretty underwhelming. Your house will have designated spots that can accommodate specific types of furniture, both inside and outside on the front yard. The best part of the housing, in my opinion, is a lot of instance bosses drop trophies, which are considered a type of furniture that you can apply to your house. You can even interact with some of them and they'll do weird things like what you're seeing at my in-game house, and they're usually very creative looking. You can also obtain some pretty cool furniture items from the reputation vendors, but after I've played an MMO like WildStar, it's hard to not see the age in LOTRO's housing. Customization overall feels very limited, and aside from storing items at your house like in a bank, visiting the house doesn't ever feel like an advantage, as it would have been cool if you could add some functionality like crafting stations that would make returning to your home feel worthwhile. But still, it's cool to me that you can turn your house into like a showboat home to cater to your accomplishments and ridiculous levels of vanity. I'd always get salty as hell if I completed a raid and someone else got the trophy for the boss because I wanted it in my home. I'd say stuff like, you can only polish a turd so much and your home is a turd. And the next neutral is the crafting. It's probably the most standard system you'd come to expect from an MMO. You'll choose a crafting profession ranging from a forester to a cook to an armor smith or weaponsmith, so the typical professions, and you gather the respective materials and supplies by finding them around the world to create basic items, and that basic item can be used in a recipe you've unlocked to create another item. And you level up by crafting anything that is listed under your current crafting rank. Over time, you'll want to keep finding and unlocking recipes to create new items, and the more advanced the recipe, the higher tier of ingredient will be needed, so you'll need to find more rare materials. In my opinion, LOTRO crafting boils down to a common formula I've seen so many times in other MMOs like Terra and Rift, for instance. On the flip side, what makes crafting a neutral is for the majority of LOTRO's life while I've been a part of the game, it seemed worthwhile to max out crafting. I've read very mixed reviews on the current state of crafting, some saying crafters have sort of gotten the short end of the stick on recent updates, but I think even if the crafting has been downward lately, in general I think the devs will eventually get it back up to par, and I've still seen kinmates getting hooked up with new gear, so in that sense I've seen its value. And crafters have been really helpful to me during enough of LOTRO's lifespan that I think it might be on the up and up soon enough again. Alright folks, we're at the final verdict. The Lord of the Rings Online has given me so many amazing memories in the past that returning to it and hoping for a similar experience felt downright foolish. And as I added another 50 hours of experience onto my belt, I was really happy I scaled my expectations of the game back before playing this time around. While LOTRO's gameplay retains the same feeling as it had half a decade ago, the game experience as a whole feels considerably different. The sense of immersion you will feel will be regularly interrupted by frequent reminders of the LOTRO store's existence. And this store is one of the worst I've seen in any game, not just an MMO. We drag games like Fallout 76 through the mud for their cash shop practices, but at least with those games, it's mainly cosmetic items. So if they received that response, then LOTRO deserves flack for this as well. But if we do the almost impossible and look past this, does the rest of LOTRO deliver enough fun to justify the time sink? I feel as though LOTRO will be a tough game to get into nowadays, especially because of the huge grind waiting for players to get to max level, and with an even higher level increase on the horizon with Minas Morgul coming out. A level boost is an option, but they don't allow you to skip as much as you think, as you'll have to still go back and do the main story arc for important character upgrades. And then there's the questing, which is as unimaginative as can be. What will spotlight this issue even further is the lack of players, which make it hard to do group content throughout the leveling stretch to break up this monotony. And it certainly doesn't help to know what kind of games are releasing nowadays with their far flashier and more attractive gameplay. I think LOTRO will still be an amazing experience for people who want a deep look into Lord of the Rings trilogy or just experience Lord of the Rings from a fresh perspective. As the storyline is packed with depth and emotion, it does a great job of representing the chaotic world of Middle-earth. But what really makes the story come together is this beautiful world that feels true to what we have read about in Tolkien's books. If you can deal with the tedious quests in between, LOTRO will take you on an adventure through the most well-realized Middle-earth you'd hope to see. I think LOTRO won't be for everybody because there's a nasty grind as a price of entry to experience the best content, and a slower pace of gameplay than we are used to in this age of gaming. But if you can conquer the leveling process, you'll have an incredible story to enjoy, a world worth enjoying it in, and the dungeons and raids are no joke either. They are challenging and exciting and make you feel like the effort you poured into your character was worth it just to experience these epic sprawling instances. Man, these videos keep getting longer. I'm sorry guys. I hope you enjoyed this video or found it helpful. I'll always love LOTRO, but it's certainly showing its age nowadays. Consider slapping that subscribe and like button's booty. And for my next video, I'm covering an upcoming very unknown MMO, and Poppy Goose might have access to an exclusive behind-the-scenes build of the game. Who knows? Who knows? And I hope to still do an Eve series, but if you guys want to see me cover a specific game or want me to upload more LOTRO, please let me know. Alright, stick around with me. We got the holiday season coming up, so I'll be covering lots of shit. Alright, take care.